Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. South Korea's exports of information and communication technology products hit a record high for the month of June, staying on an upward trend for 8 straight months. A solid demand for chips kept the figure strong. U.S. President Joe Biden addressed the nation, saying politics must never become a killing field, following the assassination attempt on former U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump has arrived in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, where he is expected to be nominated as the Republican presidential candidate. Israeli bombardment continued across Gaza over the weekend, including an attack on a UN school which left at least 17 people dead. Sunday's attack marked the 5th of its kind on a school since July 6th. An investigation is underway in the U.S. into the 20-year-old gunman who attempted to assassinate Donald Trump over the weekend. U.S. President Joe Biden called for national unity in a rare Oval Office address, and Trump is pushing through for the Republican National Convention. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
The U.S. Secret Service is investigating the circumstances surrounding an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump during a rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday local time. Authorities identified the gunman who attacked Trump as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old man from Pittsburgh. CNN reported that Crooks fired at Trump from a building rooftop outside the rally's security perimeter before he was killed by the Secret Service. The FBI says he acted alone using an AR-style rifle believed to have been bought by his father, and there are currently no public safety concerns. According to the New York Times, Crooks came from a typical middle-class background with mixed political views. He was registered as a Republican while his mother was a Democrat and his father a Libertarian. In a primetime national address from the Oval Office on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden warned of the risks of political violence in the U.S., saying it's time to cool it down.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Earlier Sunday, Biden condemned the attempted assassination of Trump, calling for the nation to come together as one and announcing an independent security review to investigate how the attack occurred. Trump's aide said he was in great spirits and doing well after the shooting, which resulted in an injury to his right ear. According to the Butler County District Attorney, one spectator at the rally died in the shooting while another is in a serious condition. Trump took to social media some 13 hours after the shooting to thank those who prayed for him and urged Americans to stand united and show their true character as Americans. Trump also stated he would stick to his schedule despite the shooting. He arrived in Milwaukee on Sunday for the Republican National Convention, where he is set to be named the party's presidential nominee later this week. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And South Korea has condemned the act of political violence against the former U.S. President Donald Trump at his election rally in Pennsylvania. President Yoon on Sunday posted on X that he is, quote, appalled by the hideous act of political violence, saying that he wishes Trump a speedy recovery. Yoon's spokesperson Kim Soo-kyung later released a statement saying that Seoul strongly condemns political violence in any form. She said South Koreans will stand in solidarity with Americans and offer comfort to those who have been alarmed by the shooting incident. Other world leaders, including Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also sent regard to the former U.S. president and criticized the act of violence. President Yoon last Friday returned to Seoul from a week in Hawaii and Washington, D.C. to attend the annual NATO summit for the 3rd consecutive year. Although South Korea is an invited partner country, there was significant interest in its role in global security amid growing concerns over the recent treaty between Russia and North Korea forging economic and military ties. Our Oh Soo-young wraps up his week in the U.S.
South Korea has stepped up as a vital contributor to global security as President Yoon Suk-yeol called for greater solidarity between the Indo-Pacific and NATO countries in supporting Ukraine and deterring Russia and North Korea's military cooperation. with Moscow and Pyongyang's treaty forged last month posing an immediate threat to the Indo-Pacific region. The South Korean leader first made a 2-day visit to Hawaii to show the strength of Seoul and Washington's alliance at the US Indo-Pacific Command. The two allies later ramped up deterrence, establishing guidelines for the nuclear consultative group formed last year, which directly involves Seoul in Washington's planning for nuclear contingencies. As President Yoon also stressed the connection between Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security, Seoul gained solidarity from NATO and its partners with the condemnation of the Russia-North Korea treaty in various joint statements. Yoon said it's because of enablers like North Korea supplying Moscow with ammunition that the war in Ukraine has stretched on. He then pledged to double South Korea's contribution towards a trust fund for Ukraine that provides non-lethal military supplies.
So we may want him to send weapons directly to Ukraine, but that would be against South Korean law. They would have to change the law first. And aside from maybe the US and others, I see few countries doing as much as South Korea to replenish European armaments that are supplying Ukraine. And certainly he's saying all the right things and contributing humanitarian relief and arms to the countries helping Ukraine.
Meeting with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, Yoon also welcomed agreements on sharing information on North Korea's weapons in Ukraine and mutually recognizing airworthiness certificates, making South Korea the first Asian country to have its domestically certified aircraft accepted by NATO members. This would increase interoperability between the two sides, as well as market opportunities. In fact, with Seoul's diverse portfolio of advanced industries crucial to national and economic security, President Yoon held talks with over 10 world leaders on bilateral cooperation spanning defence industry with Germany, infrastructure with Finland, nuclear energy plants with the Czech Republic, and space technology with Sweden.
South Korea is still structured around that imminent threat from North Korea, which they live with every day, only 26, 27 miles away from Seoul. So I think South Korea brings an awareness and a battle readiness that maybe other countries don't have, plus its superior technology. I think it's the 10th largest arms exporter in the world and is really helpful in backfilling some of the European armaments that have been shipped to Ukraine. I know
South Korea, as part of the Indo-Pacific 4 countries with Japan, Australia and New Zealand, has been working with NATO on Ukraine support, cyber defence, countering disinformation and artificial intelligence. Going forward, President Yoon said Seoul hopes to institutionalize and expand cooperation between the two blocs to jointly cover areas like the Global South, maritime security, cybersecurity, non-proliferation and counter-terrorism. Oh Seung, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has said it was very unusual that North Korea released photos showing burning leaflets sent from the south. The Unification Ministry spokesperson said on Monday that these leaflets are sent by South Korean civic groups under the freedom of expression. Regarding possible North Korean retaliation, the spokesperson reiterated the government's position to take necessary steps that the North would find hard to endure. The North Korean leader's sister, Kim Yo-jong, released a statement on Sunday warning of further retaliation against the South and releasing an image showing burning cold medicine likely sent along with leaflets from the South. Back in January, South Korea passed a law to make July 14th North Korean Defectors Day. This was to help those who fled the North settle in South Korea and to raise awareness of the human rights violations going on the other side of the border. And it was celebrated for the first time on Sunday. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Tears and emotions filled the room as songs and messages celebrated the courage of North Korean defectors and their journey escaping North Korea, as well as giving encouragement to overcome their struggles and adapt to a new life in South Korea. Sunday was the first ever North Korean Defectors Day, with the main celebration at the former presidential Blue House. President Yoon, who signed the law to designate July 14th as a day celebrating defectors, promised to take care of those who came seeking freedom as he hosted around 200 North Korean defectors.
우리 정부는 자유를 향한 여러분의 발걸음이 헛되지 않도록 하겠습니다. 대한민국을 찾는 북한 동포를 어떠한 일이 있더라도 단 한 분도 돌려보내지 않을 것입니다.
He also condemned North Korea's human rights violations, referring to the first of its kind government publication, the report on North Korean human rights from last year, and said resolving this issue will be the foundation of the unification. And taking care of the defectors is the beginning, with around 34,000 North Korean defectors currently in South Korea.
탈북민 여러분을 포용하는 것이 북한 인권을 개선하는 첫 걸음이 될 것입니다. 저는 오늘 대한민국이 여러분께 희망의 보금자리가 될 수 있도록 정착, 역량, 화합의 세 가지 약속을 드리고자 합니다.
In terms of settlement, President Yoon vowed to improve the settlement support fund and help defectors with supported savings accounts. For capability, the government will provide them with more employment opportunities with benefits for companies that hire defectors. And finally, harmony. The government is looking to tackle discrimination while offering mentoring programs with already arrived defectors helping newcomers. Yoon also re-emphasized that as North Korea are South Korean citizens, protecting them is essential for achieving true unification. In the meantime, people outside of South Korea also joined in with messages of encouragement.
We have had the privilege of meeting a few North Korean defectors and
some of the strongest people in the world, strongest and most courageous people in the world. And we're really proud of you and just want to encourage you to follow your dreams.
In the meantime, President Yoon also met with the Little League Baseball team of young North Korean defectors, the Challengers, to send them off for a trip to the U.S. President Yoon congratulated them on their journey to the birthplace of baseball, the United States, as future national team players of a free and unified Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Attacks in Gaza continue as Hamas accuses Israel of undoing any efforts towards a ceasefire. Following Saturday's strike in the Khan Yunis area of Gaza that killed at least 90 Palestinians, there were further civilian deaths in a strike on a UN school on Sunday. Yoon reports.
On Sunday, another school in the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza was struck by Israeli airstrikes. At least 17 people, mostly women and children, were killed, and 80 were wounded in the strike on the UN-run Abu Araban school, which Gaza's Civil Defence Agency says was housing thousands of displaced people. The Israeli military said the operation was against terrorists, who triggered the start of the war with their attack on Israel on October 7th. This is the fifth attack on a school since July 6th, with Israel saying that Hamas uses schools, hospitals, and other public infrastructure for military purposes, which Hamas denies. It also follows Israeli attacks on Saturday night on the Al-Mawasi refugee camp in Khan Yunis that killed at least 90 people and injured hundreds. The Israeli military claimed that the target of their attack on Saturday was Hamas commander Mohammed Deif and the commander of the Khan Yunis brigade Rafah Salameh. Israel has accused both of masterminding the Hamas-led October 7th attack on southern Israel. But with no confirmation of whether the targets were struck, Hamas says only defenseless civilians were killed. The Al-Mawasi attack on a designated humanitarian safe zone in Gaza was condemned by the United Nations and countries across the Middle East. Egypt, among mediators working toward a ceasefire deal, said that the ongoing violations would only add serious complications to reaching an agreement. Meanwhile, the United Nations says the attacks may have breached international law, adding to a UN report from March that Israel may be committing genocide in Gaza. Yoon, Arirang News.
The third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party kicks off on Monday for 4 days behind closed doors in Beijing. In what is one of the Chinese Communist Party's most important political meetings, it will be presided over by President Xi Jinping and is expected to focus on deepening economic reforms, especially as the country is struggling to fully recover after COVID-19. The government is also expected to discuss its intention to support and foster high-tech industries and its artificial intelligence development policy. In addition, in a bid to revitalize the real estate market, financial support and tax reform may be discussed. Now, the third plenum is the third of 7 plenary sessions held during the party's 5-year term. South Korea's tech exports reached a record high for the month of June, driven by strong global demand for semiconductors. Our Lee Soo-jin has the latest figures.
Semiconductors once again led the increase in South Korea's tech exports last month. Data released by the Trade Ministry on Monday shows that ICT exports in June reached $21 billion. That's an increase of 31.1% compared to the same time the previous year. It's also the largest ever recorded for the month of June and the third straight month that tech exports have seen an on-year increase of more than 30%. This was driven by outbound shipments of chips also reaching a record high last month. Chip exports surpassed a previous record set in March 2022 on the back of growth in the AI market and a recovery in the sales of IT devices. Memory chip exports were especially high thanks to the increased demand for high-value products like high-bandwidth memory chips. As for other tech exports, displays saw double-digit export growth for the 5th consecutive month, and computers also saw a rise for the 6th straight month. By country, South Korea's exports to China, the nation's biggest destination for ICT exports, saw an on-year increase for the 8th consecutive month in June. Shipments to other nations such as the United States and the European Union also rose, but there was a slump in exports to Japan. Meanwhile, ICT imports last month dropped 5.1% on year due to fewer inbound shipments of chips and rechargeable batteries. As for the first half of the year, ICT exports rose 28.2% to $109 billion, the second largest amount of exports on a 6-month basis. This was also driven by outbound shipments of chips rising nearly 50% on year on the back of strong demand. During the January to June period, other tech exports such as displays and computers saw a double-digit increase compared to the previous year, but shipments of mobiles and telecommunication devices fell. And exports to China during this period rose more than 37% on year. Imports, on the other hand, fell on year, leading to a trade surplus of $41 billion. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Training hospitals across the country are scheduled to confirm whether or not trainee doctors will return to work, with outstanding resignation letters to be processed starting Monday. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Training hospitals across the country will finally submit and process resignation letters written by trainee doctors on Monday. However, before that, training hospitals sent text messages to trainee doctors requesting a final decision by noon the same day. If a resignation is confirmed or if there is no response, the hospital will process the letters and finalize the number of junior doctors not returning for work. The trainee doctors who refused to return since taking part in a massive walkout nearly 5 months ago are saying that the medical school admissions quota hike issue has not been fundamentally resolved. Despite this, the government is looking to speed up the process in order to confirm the number of trainee doctors to be recruited for the second half of the year. Despite the deadline issued by the government, trainee doctors do not believe many of their colleagues will return. According to the government, as of last Thursday, only 69 out of a total of 10,506 trainee doctors in all 211 training hospitals who submitted resignation letters had their resignation accepted. Also, the percentage of trainee doctors working at hospitals stood at 8%. A so-called blacklist of trainee doctors and medical students who have returned to work or classes was revealed online, further pressuring trainee doctors and medical students to continue their collective action despite Monday's deadline. The government said it will investigate the matter as it seeks to avoid a further vacuum within the country's medical system. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. With just over 10 days left until the Paris Olympic Games, the Olympic torch relay arrived in the French capital on Sunday after some 2 months of traveling through France and its overseas territories. Former French international footballer and current coach of the French Olympic squad, Thierry Henry, kicked off the relay for the first leg on the famed Champs-Élysées Avenue. The flame also passed landmarks such as Arc de Triomphe, the Grand Palais, the Petit Palais, the Jardin de Luxembourg, and finally the Louvre. And it was in that last leg of the relay that South Korea got in on the act, with Jin from K-pop group BTS becoming the first torchbearer on the Louvre Museum section, where he was greeted by screaming fans. The first day of the relay through Paris coincided with Bastille Day, France's national day, adding to festivities in the city, where tourists and locals alike celebrated the Olympic spirit. The 2024 Paris Olympics run from July 26th to August 11th, while the Paralympic Games will follow from August 28th to September 8th. In football, Spain scored a late goal to beat England in the final of the UEFA European Championship. The 2-1 victory in Berlin on Sunday evening local time gave Spain its fourth European crown. Substitute Mikel Oyarzabal scored the winning goal with 86 minutes on the clock. After a goalless first half, Spain's rising star, 17-year-old Lamine Yamal, delivered an assist for fellow winger Nico Williams to score the first goal of the game on 47 minutes. England's Cole Palmer equalised in the 73rd minute before Spain's late winner. Spain have dominated this year's Euros in Germany, winning all of the 7 games they played in the tournament. Rwanda's general election begins on Monday, with the country's incumbent president Paul Kagame widely expected to win a 4th term. 66-year-old Kagame, who has served as Rwanda's president since 2000, faces only 2 political rivals, both with weak campaigns and little support. 6 other potential candidates were not cleared to run by the state-run Electoral Commission. Kagame won nearly 99% of the vote in the country's last election in 2017. A 2015 referendum lifted term limitations for presidents, technically allowing Kagame to remain in power until 2034. It also shortened presidential terms from 7 to 5 years. While Kagame's regime has been criticized by rights groups as autocratic for muzzling the media, stifling political opponents, and backing rebel groups in neighboring Congo, Kagame enjoys popular support at home. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The new week is starting off on a rainy note on Jeju, with a monsoonal front dropping showers on the island. Jeju could see 30 to 80 millimeters of heavy rain today, while the south coast will also receive heavy showers pouring 20 to 30 millimeters an hour of downpours. Meanwhile, inner regions will see passing rain with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast today. So the moisture in the air will be combined with that heat, pushing feels like temperatures a couple of degrees higher. And it's chobok today, the onset of a searing heat wave, with a heat advisory in place for the capital area, Chungcheongdo and Sejong City. Seoul gets up to 31 degrees. Daegu sees a highs of 28 degrees. But on a muggy day like today, food safety is a must. Monsoon rain looks to spread to more regions tomorrow. Central regions will see heavier monsoon rain this week. Jeju, however, will see fewer showers but will be hotter this week. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.